So you've met someone who doesn't believe in labels, and you think, how edgy, how progressive, how very 2025 of them. Except what they actually mean is this. They want the perks of a relationship, companionship, intimacy, emotional support, someone to bring soup when they're sick, without the accountability that comes when you put a title on it. It's like ordering an all-inclusive vacation, but checking out right before the bill arrives. They'll sit across from you at the table, sipping their overpriced craft cocktail, and deliver the line with a straight face. Labels are so limiting. Oh, how cute. Because while they're saying this, they're also labeling themselves as a free spirit with trust issues. Which, in translation, means commitment isn't my kink, but chaos is. They've turned avoidance into a personality trait. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once declared, "Man is condemned to be free." But Sartre clearly never had to deal with modern dating apps, or he would have rephrased it. Man is condemned to date people who mistake indecision for freedom. Your situationship isn't avant-garde, it's just indecisive performance art with a body count. And let's talk irony. They claim they're above labels, that names and categories box people in. Yet curiously, they still manage to believe in designer labels. Suddenly, words like Gucci, Balenciaga, or Supreme don't feel limiting at all. A Prada handbag doesn't seem to suppress their freedom. So apparently, it's not that they hate labels, it's just that your title, girlfriend or boyfriend, isn't worth the shelf space. Imagine being outranked in existential significance by a leather tote bag. Modern dating, as a whole, has turned into one long philosophy seminar. Everyone thinks they're Nietzsche, bravely transcending societal norms, bravely rejecting traditional definitions of love. But in practice, no one's passing the course. Nietzsche himself would probably be chain-smoking in the back row muttering, "God is dead, but your situationship is worse." The existentialist wrote about dread, absurdity, and the terror of freedom. None of them considered the sheer horror of hearing, "I don't believe in labels," while trying to figure out if you should delete Tinder off your phone. You, of course, think you're in a relationship. You've been introducing them to friends, maybe even dropping hints about the future. You think you've built something solid, something recognisable. They, on the other hand, think they're in an improv class. They're all vibes, no script, no final act. You're hoping for structure, they're hoping the scene never ends. This isn't romance, it's Schrödinger's relationship. You're both single and taken until someone observes too closely. Like when your mum asks, "So, what are you two?" At that moment, the wave function collapses and suddenly you're forced into an answer. Except they'll dodge it with, "We're just seeing where it goes." Seeing where it goes? It's been 6 months, darling. At this point, it's gone straight to nowhere. What they don't admit, and maybe what you don't want to admit either, is that the whole no labels philosophy isn't enlightened. It's a disclaimer, a preemptive alibi for when they disappoint you. It's their get out of jail free card, their way of saying, "You can't hold me accountable because technically, I never promised anything." It's not freedom, it's emotional tax evasion. But let's be brutally honest. This label resistance sells because it sounds smart. It sounds rebellious, like rejecting the tyranny of societal expectations. It makes them seem like they're operating on some higher frequency of love. But peel away the intellectual wrapping paper, and it's the same old story. It's fear. Fear of intimacy, fear of failure, fear of letting someone matter too much. They don't want labels because labels create obligations. And obligations mean they might have to face themselves. Meanwhile, you're left in limbo. Are you allowed to introduce them as your partner? Or are you forever trapped in that awkward purgatory where you say, "This is, Alex." And then everyone looks at you like you just kidnapped a stranger. Labels exist because they give relationships form. language, definition. Without them, you're stuck in the social Bermuda Triangle, halfway between partner and stranger, uncharted waters, zero map. And here's the paradox. Rejecting labels doesn't make love bigger, freer, or more authentic. It just makes it harder to talk about. It replaces clarity with fog. Because at the end of the day, human beings need categories. Neuroscience backs this up. Our brains are wired to classify, to name, to organise chaos into patterns. Labels aren't prisons, they're navigation tools. Without them, you're basically driving blind, headlights off, hoping the road figures itself out. And that's the real kicker. The no labels person isn't living outside the system. They're just outsourcing the confusion to you. They float along, blissfully label-free, while you carry the weight of uncertainty. They sleep well at night, while you lie awake wondering if you're wasting your best years, auditioning for a role that may never exist. So when someone tells you, "I don't believe in labels," remember, it's not philosophy, it's not progressive, it's not some radical rebellion against the patriarchy. It's just their polite way of saying, "You're temporary." And that is the true disclaimer date. "I don't believe in labels" sounds profound at first glance, like something scribbled in the margins of a college philosophy textbook between doodles of Sartre smoking. But peel it back, and it's less about wisdom and more about escape. It's a cheap furniture instruction manual for ghosting, vague sketches, missing screws, and the haunting realisation that the finished product will never be what you hoped it would be. You wanted a sturdy bookshelf. What you got was a pile of wood leaning against your wall until it collapses under emotional weight. Sociologist Erving Goffman famously argued that society thrives on roles, on performance, on labels. Every interaction is theatre, whether you're the friend, the lover, the colleague, or the stranger. Without these roles, Goffman warned, what we get isn't freedom. What we get is chaos, and congratulations, you're dating chaos. Not the fun, I woke up like this kind. The kind where one day you're introduced as someone special, and the next, you're just this person I know. It's not stability, it's roulette with your dignity. Your partner will insist, of course. Why ruin it with a title? Why force something that should just flow? And the answer, though obvious, never lands. Because without a title, you're basically an unpaid intern in the romance department. You're doing all the work, supporting, showing up, loving, but you don't even have an official job description. And when the internship ends, no severance package, just the gut punch of realising you gave months, maybe years, to a project that was never going to hire you full-time. Culture thrives on labels because they give us shared scripts. They tell us how to move through the world together. Without them, everything collapses into absurdity. Imagine trying to explain to your grandmother why you're spending Christmas with someone who is definitely not your spouse, probably not your partner, and officially not your friend with benefits. Grandma's pacemaker wouldn't survive the confusion. Anthropologist Clifford Geertz once said culture is made up of webs of significance. We ourselves have spun. We live in those webs. Meanings, names, rituals, traditions. People who reject labels aren't living outside the web. They're cutting the strands while you're still clinging to them. And when they're done, you're left dangling like a desperate fly, wondering why your shared reality suddenly collapsed. Label-free love isn't freedom. It's just a rebrand of emotional tax evasion. It's the romantic equivalent of an offshore bank account. Hiding assets, dodging responsibilities, leaving you with the paperwork. And like all tax evasion, it's glamorous for the person doing it and devastating for everyone else. They get the luxury of ambiguity. You get the audit. Let's not pretend this no-labels ideology exists in a cultural vacuum. It thrives in a world that fetishizes freedom and individualism without admitting that relationships require mutual recognition. Society has always relied on labels: husband, wife, fiancé, partner. Even casual flings get labelled. Hookup, one-night stand, friends with benefits. Strip the labels away, and you're left with a blank space that no one knows how to read. It's not poetic, it's illiterate. And here's the kicker. Labels aren't just about what you call each other. They're about how you present to the world. Try explaining your unlabelled relationship at a family reunion. Your aunt asks, "So, is this your boyfriend?" You stammer, "Well, we're just enjoying the moment, we don't like labels." Your aunt blinks twice, turns back to her potato salad, and silently labels you a cautionary tale. Society needs shorthand to function. Without it, you're just that person nobody can categorise, forever introduced as, "This is, my person." Not partner, not spouse, not even lover, just person. Congratulations, you've been reduced to a pronoun. And yet label phobia continues to spread like it's enlightened, like it's radical, like it's overthrowing centuries of outdated norms. But is it really? Or is it just lazy rebellion? Real rebellion takes effort, tearing down oppressive systems, redefining the rules, building something new. What I don't believe in labels does is far less noble. It dodges responsibility under the guise of being progressive. It's less revolution, more emotional procrastination. Let's call it what it is, a cultural loophole. The refusal of labels isn't liberating. It's a way to keep the benefits of intimacy without ever cashing the check. They get connection without commitment. You get stress disguised as spontaneity. And in the long run, you'll realise that love without language isn't romantic. It's incoherent. It's a badly translated poem that sounds beautiful until you try to live inside its words. So the next time someone says, "I don't believe in labels," you can nod politely, sip your drink and remember. What they're really saying is, "I don't believe in accountability." And that is why philosophy majors make terrible boyfriends. Here's the scientific truth. Your brain loves labels. Neuroscience shows that the human mind is wired for categorization. It's how we take chaos and sort it into clarity. Without labels, everything feels threatening, uncertain, unresolved. We name things so we can survive them. Predator, friend, food, danger. Imagine your caveman ancestors refusing to label the giant furry beast in front of them. "I don't believe in labels," they'd say, right before being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Survival's built on classification. So when your partner refuses to label what you have, your brain isn't impressed, it's panicking. Because here's the thing, when someone shrugs and says, "We don't need labels," your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain that plans, organises and gives meaning, starts screaming like an unpaid intern. "Dude, what is this? It's begging for coherence. It's trying to slot this thing into a folder. Dating, casual, exclusive, serious." But every time you ask for clarity, your partner hands you a blank post-it and tells you to just feel it out. Neuroscience would call that ambiguous input. You'd call it dating hell. Enter psychologist Leon Festinger and his beloved brainchild, cognitive dissonance. Festinger argued that humans experience psychological pain when their actions and beliefs don't line up. And does that describe your current reality? You're acting like a couple. Dinners, holidays, shared toothbrushes. But your partner insists it's undefined. That clash, behaviour saying one thing, words saying another, creates dissonance. Translation: your brain hurts because your relationship is lying to itself. Festinger would pat you on the back and say, "Yeah, that's exactly the misery I was talking about." And let's be clear, this isn't romance, it's not freedom, it's a stress test disguised as intimacy. Every day you wake up in this non-relationship is like running an emotional marathon in flip-flops. Exhausting, unbalanced and guaranteed to shred your soul. You're constantly negotiating unspoken rules, reading signals, passing tone like a cryptographer trying to break wartime codes. What did that text with 3 dots mean? Why did they introduce me as just a friend, but then kiss me in the parking lot? Your life becomes a lab experiment in uncertainty, and you are both the scientist and the rat. But science gives us another clue here. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, it tells us that some people are secure in relationships, some are anxious, and some, surprise, are avoidant. And avoidant personalities, they dodge labels like their lives depend on it. For them, partner sounds like prisoner, girlfriend or boyfriend sounds like ball and chain. They'll pitch it as edgy, rebellious, evolved. But spoiler, it's not edgy. It's unresolved childhood trauma wrapped in artisanal excuses. Think of it like trauma with a rebrand, now available in sleek minimalist packaging. And here's the cruel irony. To them, labels feel like chains. They'll use words like confining, limiting, trapping. But to you, no labels feel like gaslighting with extra steps. Because when you ask the simple, reasonable question, what are we? You're not asking for a wedding date. You're asking for alignment. You're asking for honesty. And their refusal turns clarity into manipulation. Suddenly you're the crazy one for even asking. Why do you need to define it? Why can't you just enjoy what we have? Translation: why can't you just accept that I benefit while you suffer? It's science, but it's also math. Relationships without labels operate at a deficit. One person gives certainty, the other hoards ambiguity. One invests, the other hedges. It's asymmetrical warfare, except the battlefield is your nervous system. Cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes when we face ambiguity. Meanwhile, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, rises when we have clarity and mutual recognition. You're producing both at once, bonding with someone who refuses to acknowledge the bond. That's not love, that's biochemical sabotage. And make no mistake, this limbo isn't neutral. It's damaging. Studies show that uncertainty in relationships correlates with higher anxiety, lower self-esteem, and increased depression. Humans thrive in stability. We deteriorate in vagueness. So when your partner says labels don't matter, science disagrees. Labels matter because they stabilize the relationship, reduce cognitive dissonance, and give your poor prefrontal cortex the relief it's begging for. Without them, you're like a phone with 87 open apps, draining energy, lagging constantly, about to crash. But let's look at this from their perspective. Just for fairness. For some, rejecting labels feels like self-protection. If they don't define it, they can't fail at it. If they don't commit, they can't be abandoned. If they don't call it love, it can't break their heart. It's a shield. But here's the brutal truth. A shield that blocks accountability also blocks intimacy. You don't get to build connection while hiding behind the barricade. That's not love. That's cohabiting with someone's unresolved neuroses. So science gives us the verdict. Your no-labels partner isn't enlightened, rebellious, or profound. They're just stuck in a feedback loop of avoidance. They're the Schrödinger's cat of romance. Simultaneously your partner and your stranger until observed. And you. You're the poor scientist staring at the box, waiting for an answer that never comes. In the end, neuroscience, psychology, and attachment theory all agree. Labels aren't traps, they're maps. They guide you, they protect you, they make sense of the chaos. Without them, you're just wandering in the dark, loving someone who refuses to name you. And that's the science of non-labels. It's not deep, it's not freeing. It's Schrödinger's partner, the relationship that only exists when no one's asking. Here's the secret nobody writes on their dating profile. People who say they don't believe in labels usually do believe in something. They believe in keeping their options open. They're not rejecting labels for some noble cause. They're rejecting labels so they can keep you in their back pocket while also browsing the clearance rack of Tinder. It's not about freedom, it's about leverage. They're leaving the door unlocked, not because they're waiting for enlightenment, but because they're waiting for a better offer. Think about it. They're not anti-relationship. They are in one with you. They're just allergic to admitting it. This is what I like to call commitment cosplay. They wear the costume of a partner. They show up to your birthday. They leave a toothbrush at your place. They even hold your hand in public when the mood strikes. But when it comes to the actual labour of partnership, defining, committing, planning, they vanish like a magician's assistant. What you're seeing is not authenticity, it's performance art. They've dressed up as a partner for Halloween, and you're the poor soul who doesn't realise the costume isn't permanent. Economists have a name for this sleight of hand: asymmetric information. In other words, one party knows something the other doesn't. They know it's casual. They know they're hedging their bets. Meanwhile, you think it's exclusive, serious, progressing. They're trading on that imbalance, letting you believe you're in a relationship while carefully avoiding the paperwork. It's like buying stock in a company that's already planning bankruptcy. You're investing in a future that doesn't exist, and they'll argue back, won't they? But love is fluid. Why box it in? Cute slogan. But so is sewage, and you don't see anyone lining up to swim in that. Fluidity sounds sexy, until you realise it means you're treading water in uncertainty, with no life raft, waiting for someone who's already halfway to shore. Fluidity is their get-out-of-jail-free card. It sounds poetic, but it functions as an alibi. Now here's where philosophy enters the crime scene. Michel Foucault, the man who made language, power and paranoia sexy, argued that power often hides in language. By refusing a label, your partner isn't avoiding power, they're hoarding it. They're controlling the narrative by keeping it undefined. They can introduce you however they want. A friend, someone I'm seeing, this person. You meanwhile have no vocabulary to assert your place in their life. Refusing a label isn't vulnerability. It's power play disguised as fragility. It's the intellectual version of, it's not you, it's me. And the brilliance of their little trick is this: they sell you ambiguity as liberation. They'll say, why ruin a good thing by labelling it? Don't you like how easy this is? They pitch it as enlightened detachment, as if you've both transcended the need for categories. What they don't mention is that they're not selling you freedom. They're selling you confusion with interest. And the longer you stay, the higher that interest rate climbs. Eventually you'll be paying in heartbreak, lost time, and the existential dread of realising you were a placeholder, not a partner. This commitment illusion works because it flatters both of you. To them it says, I'm edgy, I'm free, I'm too evolved for something as basic as a label. To you it whispers, this is temporary. But if you prove yourself worthy, they'll change. And there's the hook. You stay. You give more, you compromise. You try harder thinking your devotion will eventually transform ambiguity into clarity. Spoiler, it won't. Because their ambiguity isn't a phase, it's a strategy. And here's where the science backs it up. Commitment avoidance isn't just an attitude, it's a pattern. Psychologists note that avoidant personalities often seek intimacy only until it threatens their independence. That's when they deploy tricks like refusing labels to create distance. They don't admit this, of course. They'll wrap it up in pseudo-poetic nonsense about letting love breathe. But beneath the rhetoric, it's fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of responsibility. Fear of someone having the power to hurt them. Meanwhile, you're caught in the illusion, slowly realising you've signed up for an unpaid role in someone else's one-man show. You wanted a partnership. You got an improv skit that never ends. You wanted stability. You got a riddle. You wanted a person. You got a power play. So let's drop the mask. No labels is never about rejecting labels. It's about rejecting the obligations that come with them. And the commitment illusion, it's not magic. It's not philosophy. It's not freedom. It's a scam. One where they collect all the benefits while you foot the bill. And when it's finally over, you'll look back and realise the trick was never about love. The trick was about control. Welcome to the age of label-free love, also known as the Netflix trial version of relationships. You're in the premium plan. You get dates, intimacy, occasional affection, maybe even shared playlists, but without ever signing a contract. The kicker? You can be cancelled at any moment, no warning, no explanation, and definitely no refund. Unlike Netflix, which at least sends you an email before charging your card, this subscription comes with no notice and no customer service. You're just billed in heartbreak and late-night existential dread. Anniversaries, don't even think about it. Without labels, there's no agreed-upon start date. You can't celebrate 3 months, 6 months, a year. Because officially your timeline doesn't exist. You try to casually remark, "Happy 3 months," and get a blank stare, a shrug, or worse, a sarcastic comment. Do we need a date to enjoy this? Without labelling the relationship, the milestones disappear. No cards, no gifts, no shared stories to mark the passage of time. The temporal markers that make human attachment tangible vanish, leaving you floating in limbo. In the grand social order, relationships stabilise networks. They anchor people to families, friends, and communities. Labels create clarity in social dynamics, letting others know how to interact, what to expect, how to support you. Remove them and suddenly you're a free radical, chemically unstable, emotionally volatile, and socially unpredictable. People around you don't know how to place you, and neither do you. You might be holding hands in the park one day, dodging texts the next, all while your nervous system screams for consistency. Your social ecosystem collapses into entropy, and the only predictable outcome is stress. Sociologist Zygmunt Bauman called this phenomenon liquid love, connections that never solidify, always slipping through your fingers, no matter how tightly you try to hold them. It's love in a state of constant flux, too soft to support, too fluid to cling to. You think you're building a foundation, maybe even a life together. They think they're just streaming from your bandwidth, checking the emotional Wi-Fi without paying a subscription. It's a one-sided arrangement masked as freedom, wrapped in the packaging of modern romance. Without labels, you're forced to navigate every decision like it's a moral and logistical labyrinth. Should you introduce them to your family? Should you post about them on social media? Should you invest time, money, or emotional energy? The absence of labels doesn't remove responsibility, it amplifies it. You're responsible for interpreting the undefined, anticipating unspoken boundaries, and negotiating invisible rules that shift depending on mood, context, or the alignment of the stars. Meanwhile, your partner floats above it all, untethered like a drone surveying the chaos they've engineered. This liquid, label-free love also rewires expectations. You might be planning a weekend getaway, thinking it's a couple's trip. They call it a casual hangout. You schedule holidays around each other's families, imagining shared traditions. They consider it optional socializing. You invest in their happiness. They invest in convenience. Every gesture of commitment you make is unreciprocated, unacknowledged, and sometimes downright invisible. You're like a beta tester in a perpetual soft launch of love, giving feedback they'll never implement. And here's the real cruelty. The illusion of partnership can make it worse than outright singlehood. Single people at least know the rules. They're free to explore, date, or ghost without guilt. With label-free love, you're trapped in uncertainty while performing like a committed partner. You cook dinners, offer emotional labour, plan experiences, while they glide past the concept of obligation entirely. You're carrying emotional weight, and they're practicing minimalism with your heart. In the end, the fallout isn't just emotional, it's cultural. Label-free love undermines the social scaffolding that gives relationships meaning. It erodes rituals, traditions, and shared timelines. It transforms human connections from stable networks into temporary flux, leaving everyone involved, wondering if they ever really existed in the other person's life. And while you're hoping for stability, for shared growth, for a future, they're using your presence as a convenience, a Wi-Fi connection that doesn't require a password, but keeps them streaming comfortably through life. So when you find yourself in this type of relationship, recognize the pattern. You're not in a partnership, you're in a subscription service. You're not building a future, you're providing bandwidth. And the longer you stay, the more you realize liquid love isn't liberating, it's draining. It's a cultural mirage, offering the illusion of connection while demanding nothing but compliance, patience, and the occasional self-delusion. Welcome to your heart as a subscription service. Cancel anytime if you're lucky. Eventually, the facade of no labels, all vibes collides with reality. You'll be enjoying the comfort of ambiguity, thinking you've hacked modern love, when suddenly, boom, you're thrust into the spotlight of your own humiliation comedy. Maybe it's a holiday dinner, maybe a casual brunch, maybe a surprise encounter with your parents. And there they are, your no-labels partner, charming, witty, emotionally distant, and suddenly introduced as just a friend, just a friend. The words sting more than a breakup text because this time it's public. You're the punchline. Your pride. Optional, apparently. Labels can feel limiting. They can feel like chains, rules, or a trap. But they also provide clarity. They offer orientation in a landscape that's otherwise emotional quicksand. Without them, you're effectively speed-running emotional bankruptcy. Every milestone, birthdays, anniversaries, family introductions, shared holidays, becomes a trapdoor. Every expression of affection is fraught with uncertainty. Are you over-investing? Are you assuming too much? Without a label, your brain never rests, never builds confidence, never experiences the cognitive relief that comes with acknowledgement. And let's talk philosophy for a second, because nothing says modern heartbreak like a Nietzsche quote. He wrote, "Freedom is the will to be responsible to ourselves." Funny, isn't it? Your no-labels partner skipped the part about responsibility entirely. They're floating in a self-declared freedom that is, in reality, a fancy cage. They get to live unbound, uncommitted, untethered, and you get to marvel at the illusion while dangling on the edge, hoping the cage has an exit. Nietzsche's point was that freedom requires accountability. Without that, it's just chaos with a good marketing pitch. The irony is delicious. They're anti-label, anti-definition, pro-vibe, until you stop answering texts, returning calls, or matching their energy. Then suddenly you've crossed the line. You're toxic, cold, unreasonable, or worse, possessive. Funny how refusing labels is lauded as liberation until the person exercising their own autonomy disagrees with the rules of ambiguity. Freedom is only freedom when it serves them. Your boundaries? Optional, negotiable, inconvenient. It's the paradox of modern dating. I don't believe in labels until you demonstrate the audacity to exist outside their constructed comfort zone. And when it inevitably ends, and it will, don't expect a breakup. Breakups imply some acknowledgement, a shared reality, some ceremonial closure. No-label relationships do not end. They evaporate. You don't break up, you simply fade. You're like an unpaid utility bill. Forgotten, unacknowledged. Disconnected without warning. And only noticed when someone realizes their emotional grid is suddenly offline. The fade out is crueler than a fight because it erases your existence from their narrative while leaving you to process the void. Labels, as mundane as they seem, are the scaffolding that makes intimacy functional. Without them, your emotional architecture collapses under the weight of ambiguity. Every invested hour, every shared laugh, every gesture of affection operates in a vacuum. There's no map, no blueprint, no reference point. You can't measure progress, plan a future, or even understand what you're building together. You're constructing a house in zero gravity, impressive maybe, but ultimately unsustainable. Even science backs this up. Humans crave certainty, predictability, and structure in social bonds. Our brains produce cortisol when faced with chronic ambiguity, which explains why your stomach knots every time they respond with a shrug or a vague "we'll see." Oxytocin increases with clarity and mutual acknowledgement. Without labels, you're producing stress hormones, while your partner collects the social and emotional benefits without investment. It's like running a marathon with someone else pedaling your bicycle. Exhaustion is guaranteed and glory non-existent. And there's the cruel artistry of it. Freedom without definition masquerades as enlightenment. They'll say, "I'm just letting things flow." You nod, you smile, you participate. Meanwhile, they're orchestrating an emotional Houdini act. Present when convenient, absent when uncomfortable, charming when observed, dismissive when private. You're not a partner. You're an experiment, a spectator sport, a narrative convenience. The inevitable crash is not shocking. It's inevitable because ambiguity is unsustainable. Humans can tolerate uncertainty in small doses. A postponed reply, a misread text. But sustained vagueness corrodes trust, erodes confidence, and dismantles intimacy. The person who refuses labels is essentially testing the elasticity of your attachment, waiting to see how far they can stretch your commitment before it snaps. Spoiler alert, it snaps. Every single time. And when it finally snaps, you're left processing grief for someone who never fully existed in your life in the first place. That's the tragedy of the no-labels partner. Freedom is theirs, cage is yours, and the emotional ledger is heavily, unfairly weighted. You learn too late that living free was just a euphemism for avoiding responsibility, and you realise that the real cost of their liberty was your emotional labour. So remember this, freedom without accountability isn't freedom at all. It's chaos with a smile, a cage decorated in sleek philosophy quotes and Instagram aesthetics. The crash isn't dramatic, it's silent, leaving you wondering how a relationship that seemed so present suddenly became a ghost. And Nietzsche. He's probably still crying in the corner, shaking his fist at your fading existence while muttering, "This is not freedom. This is tragedy, dressed up as modern love." Love without labels sounds chic, progressive, Instagrammable, like a curated lifestyle choice rather than a real human entanglement. It promises freedom, fluidity, liberation from the outdated shackles of commitment. But let's be honest, what it really offers is limbo with better captions. You think you're dating an enlightened soul. In reality, you're starring in a slow-motion, emotional purgatory, where every interaction teases intimacy and every silence whispers ambiguity. The whole thing looks polished on social media but feels like your dignity is being slowly auctioned off behind the scenes. Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." Ah yes, that's your heart on a label-free roller coaster. You buckle up, hoping for a thrill ride, and end up gripping invisible restraints as your stomach lurches, your mind spins, and your sense of reality becomes a series of provisional definitions that never stick. Every text that goes unanswered, every date that ends with "we'll see," every affectionate gesture that is never acknowledged compounds that dizziness. Freedom should feel exhilarating. Here, it feels like vertigo. Rejecting labels doesn't kill love. It doesn't extinguish attraction or affection. But it does murder accountability. Love without a name is love without responsibility, without boundaries, without a shared framework to nurture and sustain it. It's like planting a garden without stakes or irrigation. You may see fleeting beauty, but eventually everything wilts. You give, they receive. You invest, they float. You hope, they hedge. Without acknowledgement, without definition, your efforts exist in a vacuum, creating emotional echoes that vanish as soon as they leave your lips. And here comes the ultimate existential gut punch. At some point, you'll ask yourself, am I their partner? Or am I just their emotional Airbnb? You provide warmth, attention, and temporary shelter for feelings that are never fully yours to claim. You're a place to recharge, a source of comfort, a convenient presence. And yet you're transient, unnamed, undefined, replaceable. You think you're building intimacy. They think they're maintaining a flexible amenity. Every smile, every shared secret, every act of love is commodified as a temporary convenience. The real paradox, the cruelest trick of all, they don't believe in labels, yet you have one. You have an unspoken title, etched invisibly on your forehead. Temporary. That's the label they assign you without consent, without clarity, without discussion. It's not partner, it's not lover, it's not even friend. It's a status that dissolves the moment they see fit. And yet for months, maybe years, you've operated under a different set of assumptions. Loyalty, care, investment, never realising that your role in their life was always provisional, always conditional, always contingent on their convenience. This is where modern romance meets existential philosophy and turns it into a scam. It's Kierkegaard with a swipe right twist. It's Nietzsche's freedom rebranded as casual indifference. It's Foucault's power hiding in language, wielded not for enlightenment, but for control. And you? You're caught in the web, oscillating between hope and dread, love and confusion, commitment and eviction. You wanted clarity, you got ambiguity. You wanted partnership, you got a ghost tenancy. You wanted connection, you got a philosophical loophole. So here's the takeaway. The paradox of love without names is that it looks like liberation, but functions as entrapment. It dresses itself in intellectual rhetoric and cultural sophistication, but underneath, it's emotional arbitrage. It exploits your willingness to invest without reciprocation. It thrives on your hope and your patience. And when it finally ends, or when you finally wake up, the lesson is bitter, clear, and slightly hilarious in retrospect. Modern romance has perfected the art of selling emotional limbo as an aspirational lifestyle. In the end, the moral is simple. Love deserves names. Commitment deserves acknowledgement. Freedom without responsibility is not freedom. It's chaos disguised as elegance. And the moment you realise that, the dizziness eases, clarity returns, and the existential scam unravels. You step off the roller coaster, take back your dignity, and decide that labels aren't cages. They're lifelines.